Hi, welcome everybody. I'm so excited to be here today. I'm really, really excited to have Laura Hope Richards from the Richards Law Firm. She's an attorney in Florida, and she specializes in land trusts. And I am absolutely delighted to have her as part of our meeting today. We have a lot of people signed up for this meeting, and I know we already have a lot of questions. There's some that have come up in my Facebook group. If you're not in my Facebook group, look for it, Jean Norton's Real Estate Contacts. And there's a lot of good questions that are in there. There's already some questions that are coming up. Again, I'm Jean Norton. I've been involved in real estate for quite some time, since 2009. And I have blogged since I started real estate investing, and I've got a lot of stories, some that are a little bit painful, but this is business. So, nothing comes easy. So, and I am absolutely delighted to have Laura Hope Richards with us. She's here via audio. Unfortunately, we can't seem to get her camera working today, but she is a wealth of information. She knows a lot about land trust, certainly more than I do. I am just a lay person that happened to learn about land trust when I started my real estate training. And just to let you know how I discovered the land trust, not only did they mention it in my training about land trust, of course, it gets way deeper than just just use a land trust. But I had a question and I had a concern about land trusts and about real estate investing. And I was new, and I don't know if any of you guys online now are new or experienced or just, or where you are. But I will tell you that when I was new, it was very, very, very frustrating for me to understand what my path is, what it should be in real estate investing. And I was really upset because I couldn't get a deal. I decided to just step outside the box. Let's think outside the box, and how can I buy these properties and have the flexibility that I need in order to either take the property down with hard money or cash or private investors, or to possibly wholesale it. And the one thing that probably really, really got me hooked on land trust was the inability to wholesale properties when you buy from banks or from lenders that own real estate. And when I realized I could take title in a land trust with me as the trustee, then I could have, this may be a little overwhelming, but I then had the ability to wholesale a property and still take title in a land trust with me as trustee. Now, I know this sounds kind of complicated, and it really took some brainstorming. And in fact, it was in my networking meeting, my local real estate networking meeting. And if you don't go to a local networking meeting on real estate, you should. And if you don't have one, I can teach you how to start one, because we know what works. Anyway, it was at the end of one of those meetings saying, okay, now I can get real estate. I can actually get real estate via online auctions. And I've done some webinars on the online auctions, and they're on this platform. You can go back and look at the other webinars that are available. So I kept saying, how can I get these properties via the online auctions, which are very strict? They have very strict rules, and be able to have the opportunity to wholesale them, or go ahead and buy them and renovate them and sell them. That was when we said, well, one of the two other people that I was talking to in the meeting, or right after the meeting, actually in the parking lot after the meeting, they said, well, can you take title in a land trust? It was like, yes, I can take title in a land trust. And it was like, wow, I'm just like, wow, the whole world opened up. I could take title in a land trust. I could market it as, once it's under contract, I could still market it. And it was sort of this loophole that still is open. I could still wholesale properties in a land trust, and that is probably a whole subject in itself. But that's when I actually started using land trusts, was by buying properties via online auction. I take title in a land trust, and then I have this period of time, probably 30 days or so. It depends on how long it takes for the bank to get all the documents together so that they can close. And at that time, I would, through parallel, try to wholesale or raise funds for the project, and whatever came first would work. So not only did I have this entity that was free for me to set up, I had the opportunity to wholesale it, which basically is, we'll get into that, it's a sale of beneficial interest, and not violate any of either the online auctions rules or the seller's rules, which are very, very strict. So that was when I realized how incredibly flexible the land trusts are. And from then on, every time I took title to a property in a land trust, I discovered something more and more powerful regarding land trusts. And so I know there's a lot of land trust experts that are out there. Reach out to them. I'm delighted to have Laura Hope Richards from the Richards Law Firm join me. And Laura, welcome.
Hey guys. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good. Okay, guys. I am a Florida attorney.
Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
I also own Investor Trustee Services. With Richards Law Firm, I just do basic real estate law, but I only work with investors. That's it. Investor Trustee Services is a company that grew out of the law firm. Since my clients are all investors, I found myself always being asked about land trust. And at the time, there were no attorneys that did land trust in Florida. And I just ended up over the last 10 years becoming, for ethical reasons, per the Florida Bar, I cannot call myself an expert. But I've literally done thousands of land trust in the state of Florida. In Orange County alone, which is Orlando, I hold title to at least 300 pieces of property. Those are not mine. Those are all clients, and they're all in land trusts. So that's how I use them. And everyone has a different reason for using them. Jean, you talked about how you were going to use them for wholesaling. Private money lenders use them. People who are doing seller financing or lease options use them. People who are, I'll just say it. People who are going through divorce and don't want people to know what they have, they use them. There's all kinds of reasons for using it. Real estate investors, though, regardless of what kind of deal you're picking up, going ahead and naming the land trust as your buyer gives you so much flexibility on how you maneuver that deal. If you want to wholesale it, you got it in a land trust, stick your end buyer as the beneficiary. If you want to do an assignment, same thing. If it's a short sale and all of a sudden you have these awful problems with funding, or you run out of cash and you need a private lender, the land trust allows you to manipulate a deal while you're under contract without going through addendums and earnest money deposit disputes and things like that. So for investors, that's why I like using land trusts, and I use them on every single one of my personal deals.
I do too. I mean, I use them all the time. The only time I don't is if I'm refinancing and the lender forces me to take title out of the land trust. I'm sure that
conventional lenders will make you do that. Most conventional lenders, there's one here in town that doesn't. But as far as what I see across the board, not just here in town, conventional lenders make you take it out. Private money lenders, if you will just take the time to explain a land trust to them, they would prefer that the property be in a land trust for private money lending, whether it's you acquiring a property, pulling cash out, whatever it may be. For a private money or a hard money lender, they prefer the land trust model. If you can get them in contact with someone like me who can explain it, they'll be all for it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the, I'm getting a little distracted. I want to just do some housekeeping announcements here. On the right side of the screen, there's 2 tabs. One is chat and one is questions. And we've already started to get some questions lined up with regards to land trust. And, you're welcome to participate in this arena. So tell me, what is, can you just do for the audience just a little overview of really just the basics of what is a land trust?
Okay.
And
a land trust is a means to hold title to real
just what is
property.
A land trust?
So Mary's deed, that answers your question. What kind of property can I put into a land trust? You can put real property. So a land and house. You can't put your car. Okay. You can put real property into a land trust, and that land trust can hold title to the real estate. Now, a land trust is just a piece of paper. It alone cannot hold title to real estate. You need an entity capable of holding title, a natural person over the age of 18, or a corporate entity. That natural person or corporate entity that you're going to use, that's your trustee. The trustee holds title on behalf of that land trust. So my LLC that clients use is Investor Trustee Services. If you go in Florida to a county and you type in Investor Trustee Services, you'll see all the properties that are listed for my clients' land trusts. So you've got a land trust and you've got party number 1. That's your trustee, which is sometimes me. And then the next person that you have in a land trust, that's your beneficiary. That's going to be like you, Mary. The beneficiary is going to be who basically pulls my strings. I take direction from the beneficiaries of the land trust. The beneficiaries direct the trustee how to act. The profits and losses for the property, they pass through the land trust to the beneficiaries. When you decide to sell the house, you call your trustee and you say, Hope, I want to sell it, sign these contracts. I do it. So those are your parties. You have the trust, the trustee, and the beneficiary. And all of those work with real property.
So one of the really powerful parts about this is the anonymity that a land trust can provide. You or your company being the trustee, tell me about how that protects the beneficiary from.
Okay, so if you go
terrible, dangerous,
so I'm
potential vulnerable situations.
Real quick. But I am located in Orange County, Florida. So that's where my practice is. But if you go onto Orange County, Florida's property appraiser, and you type in Investor Trustee Services, in that particular county, there will be pages and pages and pages of properties. And you can click on them all day long. All you're going to see is Investor Trustee Services as trustee of the yada yada land trust, 123 Main Street land trust. Every single time you click, that's all you find. You pull up the deeds, that's all you see. If you go on to the Division of Corporations, you see my name. You, as someone searching, has no idea who the beneficiary of that land trust is. The only person that knows that is me and my client, because land trusts are not recorded. So that's where you get your privacy. But when people say privacy, I think that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg, because what you really mean when you say privacy is a shield from liability. You don't want any kind of liabilities coming that are going to attach to everything that you own. That's why people think about what they are talking about when they say land trust and privacy. But there is a big misconception that comes with that I literally clear it up every single day. If you have 3 pieces of property and you own them all in one LLC, the Gene Norton LLC, okay? And you own 3 properties on Main Street. If one of those properties on Main Street gets something as simple as a code violation lien, because you didn't cut the grass, that code violation lien is going to attach to absolutely everything that Gene Norton LLC owns. So you've got the one property you hadn't been cutting the grass on, but then you've got the other property you've been working really hard to flip and you want to sell it. You get to closing to sign the documents on your flip, and guess what? You have a code lien that you need to satisfy on that property that you didn't cut the grass. You have to do it. Right, because it attached to everything, not just the one with the bad grass.
And in that LLC.
Whereas if you had it in a land trust, you had individual land trusts set up, that code lien would only attach to the bad grass house. It's not going to attach to the property that you've been working so hard to flip, because land trusts are considered separate entities. Just like you and I are separate people. A land trust is a separate entity. I have people ask me, well, why don't I just set up separate LLCs or separate corps? 1, it's way more expensive. And 2, when you want to file taxes, you've got to file a tax return for every single one of those LLCs. Your accountant is going to hate you. They're going to charge you a lot of money. Yeah. So what you could do instead, you could have a land trust, separate land trust for those properties, and your one LLC, Gene Norton LLC, it could be the beneficiary of that land trust. So now you have the protection, you have 3 separate entities, but you've got the ease of use of just you being your beneficiary.
And that's powerful. I mean, what you just said is a big money saver right there. You use a land trust for each property, one LLC as the beneficiary, so you're protected from anything the other properties are doing, so there's no overlapping. You're not having to pay for multiple entities, like multiple LLCs, multiple CPA bills and multiple filings. So you're saving a ton of money right there. And not only that,
no, the only way
really
that
public information
I am ever allowed, and I've never
property.
had to, and I've been through major litigation with clients in land trust, the only way that I would ever have to disclose a beneficiary is if I got a court order to do so. And I'm telling you, I've been through cases that have lasted years where there was a lot of weird stuff going on, and I still never had a judge tell me that I had to disclose who the beneficiary of that land trust are. So that's a really strong relationship in a state that's recognized. And, I said code lien because that's just a really simple thing, like cut your grass. The city charges you $80 or something. That's not that big of a deal. But if you think about the fact that a tenant could be bitten by a neighbor's dog at your rental and a judgment attaches to it, that's a whole different ballgame. So you paying a little bit of money to shield your other assets, that's a huge difference for liability purposes. No,
I'm
never once.
And
I haven't been through that much litigation, and it's not the type of litigation that you would expect. It's not like I said, a landlord-tenant situation or code lien violation. It's been things like insurance disputes where the insurance company failed to pay out on some fire damage, or a divorce. That was a really long one. There's things like that where the land trusts come into play, and they last a long time. It's complicated, weird stuff comes up. And even in those situations, I have never had to disclose the beneficiaries. Where I spend the most time arguing about disclosing, because judges understand, is with title agents. And, title companies and real estate agents and mortgage brokers, yes. Those are the people that I spend the most time on the phone with, explaining why and I say this every day, it's none of your business. So, and you start off nice, and then you end up with, it's none of your business. And I just explain why I don't even type it out anymore. I have like a cut and paste thing because I've done it so many times. I just send that in the email. But that's something that you spend a lot of time on. And that's why when you're picking those people we talked about, a trustee and a beneficiary, and I see a question kind of about this, when you're picking the trustee who's going to be the only visible person in public record, you should pick it with care. I see someone, Harold, ask, can a trustee and a beneficiary be the same thing? Or can you personally be your trustee? In Florida, the land trust statute reads that a trustee and a beneficiary can be the same person. There's no longer merger concerns there. But if Harold McGee is the trustee of the 123 Main Street Land Trust and someone calls asking about your property, you have got to have enough wherewithal to put on that trustee hat and act as a third party, not the property owner. And the same thing goes for if you appoint your brother to act as trustee. I know you think that you're going to know everything that happens with your property, but let's say that you have a rental. This is a real life example just to show you why you should be careful. I was a trustee for a client who was renting out the property. They did not know that their tenant was growing weed in the house, apparently a big operation. So the DEA showed up at my office because I'm the trustee and wants to know if I know there's a weed farm at the house. Well, of course I didn't. But the point is, they never talked to my client. They never bothered my client. I mean, I called them and I told them that the DEA is wondering what's going on, but that was it. You have to be careful, though, that the DEA goes and knocks at your brother's door, he doesn't spill the beans.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, a trustee is really carries a lot of responsibility to protect the beneficiary. And even when, I'm a trustee and let's say I wholesale a property to somebody, I basically, change the beneficial interest to this other entity. And if, and I might still get tax bills or mail or whatever, it is my job to make sure that they're aware of it. But if somebody came to me and said, disclose who's really owning the property, I just know I don't have to do that. And that's part of the protection that is offered when you're using the land trust. And excuse what's going on behind me. I
can answer some questions to the right. So, do you want me to answer some of them?
Yeah.
Okay. Can a self-directed IRA be beneficiary in a land trust? 100%.
Yes, would you please?
Absolutely. Do it all the time. My IRA is a beneficiary of my land trusts. I already answered the trustee, entity, beneficiary. They do not need to be different people. Can a land trust protect your primary owner occupied property? Yes, it can. Depending on your state and what kind of homestead protections you have determines whether or not I advise clients to do it. In Florida, we have 100% homestead protection, so I don't really see the point. If your state is different and you don't get that 100% protection, then absolutely. But this goes back to, I saw somebody on Facebook ask me about forms. You can find forms wherever you want, but when you run into this situation about a homestead, you better be sure you're using an attorney who understands what they're doing with land trust. It's not just the land trust. I don't even know the land trust is the most important document in a transaction. The deed actually is probably most important, because if you mess up a deed, meaning you fail to put the trustee powers in there, you fail to appoint a successor trustee if you need one, or you fail to put the homestead language on a homestead property, you've messed the whole thing up. It's fixable, but I'm going to charge you twice as much to fix it. So, it's just more work. So yes, you can find basic forms pretty much anywhere, but when you really start working land trust and you start manipulating them to work your deals, you really need someone who understands what they're doing to coach you through it. Once you do one or two, and Jean, you'll probably agree with this, once you do a few, they're pretty easy. Yeah, they seem intimidating at first, but if you have someone coaching you through it, it's just like wholesaling. If you have Jean coaching you through wholesaling, once you do a few, you kind of start to get an idea. You're going to wish you had her when you find out there's a sinkhole in the backyard or something on deal 10. But for the first few, it's nice to have a coach tell you. It's the same thing with land trust. It's nice to have someone kind of coach you through the first few and provide you that doc you need to get a permit that you never even thought about. That's the kind of stuff that you should probably have some help with, not just documents from the internet.
Yes, I must admit, what I use is not something I would share with anybody. What I've used for my land trusts, I hasn't ever been challenged. However, I've done dozens of deals with land trusts. In fact, I to be honest with you, I have an online template with blanks in there, and so when I get notified that I have that I've got the high bid on a deal,
Yeah.
I'll just then type in the
I think
ABC
even
Land Trust.
I did.
And bam,
I work for a
it's
title
on.
company.
It's
I work for
super easy.
Southeast Professional Title. I'm in-house counsel there. And I remember the woman that owns it, she goes, you know what, Hope, you should learn about land trusts. And I thought, I got too much to do. I got 2 little kids. I am not doing this. And she handed me the book, like Land Trust for Dummies or something. And I remember reading that book, and that's where I started. Now, obviously, it's all changed since then, but that's where I started. And now I find myself doing like you do, Gene. I found myself coaching people through land trust. And I told you, Gene, when you showed me this platform, I was like, oh, this Expertise TV, this is really cool. Because I've been asked to start like this, start online webinars and classes and things like that about land trust. So I'm probably going to do that here pretty soon.
Yeah, good. And I'd recommend it. I recommend, getting somebody.
My name is Laura Hope Richards. I am Southern.
Here, Laura,
so
is it Hope or
my
Laura?
family calls me Laura Hope. I have this Southern thing. But in college, I dropped it because nobody could understand what I was saying.
Oh,
so
okay.
now everyone just calls me Hope. Yeah. Yes.
Hope. Okay, then I will refer to you as Hope. Yeah, it's been a delight. You had a Facebook live that was just very educational. And if you want to do land trusts, it really is important to educate yourself. I know I sort of learned on my own. I did a lot of research. I did a lot of internet research. I read a lot of articles, and I guess I just did trial and error, or trial and shock that it worked, and been totally delighted with the results. But if you've got somebody like Hope to talk to about it, it really is helpful. And there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of things that it's like, I don't know what I don't know, so I feel paralyzed. And if you've got people that have worked with land trusts, have worked with real estate deals, that have been through it and do it themselves and have them available to you, then it's totally worth it. And I recommend maybe even reaching out to Hope for any deals that you've got going on, or even just some education about the land trust concept in general. And of course, I still have openings in my advocacy group. So if you want to get closer to me and experts on how to handle your real estate deals, I invite you to pursue that. So we've got some more questions. Let's see. What about the different states?
Actually,
somebody's asked
Tennessee
about
was the first state where I
trust
became a
in
licensed
Tennessee.
attorney. That's where I got my first job. So I lived in Nashville. So Tennessee does not have a land trust statute. Land trusts are creatures of statute. They are not some just willy-nilly thing that you can throw a property in, deed it in there, and hope it works. They are specifically creatures. Well, yeah. Well, you may not be able to sell it. You can name it, but you may not be able to sell it when they ask you what the heck you were doing. But they are creatures of statute. There's only, I would say, at the most 10 or 12 states that specifically have land trust. And do not be misled. Just because a state has a land trust statute does not mean it is what I call an investor-friendly statute. Some states have land trust statutes for conservation purposes. So, you'll see like wildlife management. they'll take title to thousands of acres and they'll put it in a land trust for conservation purposes. That's different. That statute is not written in a way where you can manipulate it like we can in like Florida, Illinois, Texas, things like that. If you do not have a specific land trust statute, you do, except for the possibility of maybe Louisiana, you do have a trust statute. Those are for estate planning purposes. It's just a statute, just like the land trust is. It just tells you can create a trust, you can do X, Y, and Z with it, and you can do it under this particular statute. You can put whatever you want to in the trust. You can put it that I'm creating this trust so that I can hold title to real estate, and the purpose is this, and the beneficiary is that. You just have to know how to manipulate a living trust statute versus a land trust statute. And when it comes time to sell it, there's going to be some different disclosures that you may have to do, but you just have to work them differently.
So if you can just, if you're in a state like Texas, I'm in Texas, we do not have land trust statutes, but
right,
it will fall under the revocable living trust statutes, which are very similar.
Right.
Basically,
exactly.
The only difference
you just have to work
is that you can put more than just land in a living trust. Right. So, okay. And just like you, I find I spend a lot of my time educating title companies. I think the most frustrating question I get is, what is your tax ID number for the trust? And, and even when I've wholesaled a property to another and I'm still the trustee, I try to explain to them that you don't get to get away from the IRS. You still have to claim any transaction sale, and whoever benefits from the sale, it still has to be reported to the IRS. So I try to explain that it's the beneficiary's tax ID that goes on those documents. And even then, the title people, they just don't believe me. So
that's probably one of that's probably one of my biggest issues is them wanting either the land trust tax ID number or the trustee's tax ID number. So in some states with a living trust, you do have to register it with the state and you get a tax ID number for it. Most do not. And if you don't, just like Jean said, they act like a pass-through entity. Profits and losses pass through to the beneficiary. And that's a concept that is found in the statute. So that should be enough to answer those questions for title agents. If not, I just pull the attorney card and I say, I want to talk to your underwriter. That's how I handle it. Sometimes they ask for the trustee's tax ID number, which is an LLC. So of course I do have a tax ID number for it, but I don't get any of the profits or losses. I'm not getting those sale proceeds. I'm sure as heck not paying my clients taxes for them on the exposure. So I just don't give it to them. But that's just the way to explain it. It's a pass-through entity with profits and losses passing through the beneficiary, and you just cite the statute that tells you so. And that should basically be the end of it. I've pulled closings from title companies who just won't cooperate. I'm like, well, fine, you just lost your closing if they're just that difficult. And then you'll have clients who, not clients, title companies who are like, well, we need to see a copy of the trust, which is a valid question if you messed up your deed. Like I said earlier, I think the deed's kind of most important because it dictates everything else. In your deed, if you did not give your trustee the power to sell, convey, lease, encumber, all of those kind of things, then that title company is right. They do need to see your trust agreement to see if the trustee has the power to act on behalf of the trust. Well, then you just screwed everything up. Now you got to give the title company the land trust. They know who the beneficiary is. They know everything. So again, the deed's probably, in my opinion, the most important document.
Yeah, I there was a time where I had to, I often have to provide the trust documents when I do make a purchase. There was only one time that the title
I've had that
company
happen.
actually
Yeah.
recorded the trust agreement, and it was in Florida.
It is, because there's no taking it back. There's no going and getting a court order,
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
to make it private or anything like that. I had it happen on a private money deal. They recorded our mortgage and our note, but we didn't want them to record our land trust that was holding title to the mortgage and note. So yeah, we've had that happen. It was in Florida. I always send closing instructions. Right. So that I always coach my clients, send closing instructions to a title company you've never worked with before, who isn't familiar with your portfolio and how you work it. My closing instructions tell them exactly what I want my deed to look like, exactly what I want my signature lines to look like. And then in bold print, it says that you do not record it. And if you do, I consider it a title defect and it's a claim. Yeah.
Okay, you're hired.
So
my next Florida deal. Okay. So we've got some more questions. Let's see, we've got a couple of them. Harold's asked about Texas, Illinois.
Yeah, so Illinois, yes, Texas, no. So they can be in living trust. And then there's another one that says, there's another question from Lisa that says almost the exact same thing. So states that do not have land trust statutes, we use the trust statute to create a land trust. Okay, this is a matter of semantics, but I want to be clear. A land trust and a living trust are completely different. If you have a living trust is basically for estate planning purposes, but you can put real property in it. You can also put personal property in it. A land trust can only hold title to real property. If you have an investor-friendly land trust statute in your state, it is by far the best option. If you don't, I guarantee you have a living trust statute that you can manipulate for the purposes of holding your title to real estate, and you can work it as you would a land trust, but they're completely different beasts. Does that make sense? I wish I could see all of y'all shaking your head so I would know. hopefully that does.
I think the bottom line is that if there's a land trust statute, then you've got land trust, laws. If there isn't a land trust statute, you can refer to it as a revocable trust or living trust and depend on those laws to guide you as you move forward. So the answer is yes, you can have a land trust in every state. The way the state deals with it, may be as a land trust, which is separate from a living trust, or it may be as a living trust because it's a passive revocable, passive entity. So the answer
every
is
state's going to interpret it differently.
But right. And another point that I wanted to bring up, I remember saying to one person that once you put a property in a land trust, and this probably doesn't apply to Florida, but once you put a property in a land trust, you can change the beneficiaries and it does not create a taxable event. And that, of course, would depend on the state. In Florida, because it does have strict land trust laws, I remember seeing in the statute that if I change the beneficial interest, that is
taxable as in the IRS
event.
Or taxable as in real property transfers. Okay. Taxable
real
event
property
as far as real property
stamps,
transfers go,
etc.
If I purchase a property for $100,000 and I put it in a land trust, and then I assign that beneficial interest to my end buyer for $120,000, I have to pay the real estate documentary stamps on that $120,000. So it is a taxable event. You are transferring real property for value. So yes, you have to do it. But the benefit is that is not a recorded transaction. That's just a piece of paper we did behind the scenes. There's no deed showing a change, which triggers the property appraiser to come out and reassess your property value, which could make your real property taxes go up. So yes, you have to pay transfer taxes on the transfer of the interest, but it will shield you from your property taxes going up. And a lot of people do not pay those documentary stamp taxes on an assignment of beneficial interest because they think it's a document that's behind the scenes. How do they know? I am telling you right now, they perform audits regularly. And regularly.
In Florida's notorious for that. But let's say it's in a non-land trust statute state like Texas, and I transferred the beneficial interest to somebody else, for a fee. I mean, that doesn't invoke.
If you were just transferring
taxes,
it for,
in
Texas would be different.
Taxes.
So if you're assigning the beneficial
Correct.
interest, but the assignment is not for a transfer of value on the land, you're just getting a fee of like, let's just say $500 because you just found the end buyer or something. That's not a taxable event on real property. That's a taxable event for you on income, but it's not a taxable event as it relates to real property. On those, make sure that you've papered everything and there's all the disclosures so that if you ever get audited either by, the real property authorities in your state or the IRS, hello, how did it happen? You want to make sure you have that all papered up to show what the actual taxable event was.
So I'm going to ask you then, just as a potential client, what I do when I do a wholesale is I'll have a sale of beneficial interest, which has my fee in it. So and in there it talks about reimbursing me my earnest money deposit that I've already paid, etc. And I may charge a $5,000 fee for the sale of this sale of beneficial interest that we all agree on. So that's where we get all of the terms straightened out. Then once they agree to that, then the beneficiary directs me to make an assignment of beneficial interest, assignment of beneficial interest, and that becomes part of the land trust document itself. That
created like a million scenarios in my head that I can think of how that would be worked. So, I can tell you how I handle those. But there are multiple ways to do it, and there's so many different factors that come into play. So for this particular explanation, I'm going to assume that you are not acquiring a short sale. We're going to leave that out. Okay, that's fine. So if you are acquiring an REO, then when you entered into that contract with the bank agent, you put the name of the land trust as your buyer. During your inspection period, probably, you found your end buyer that you're going to wholesale it to. So to save money, what I do is I just go ahead and I do the closing on that first side transaction where I put it in the land trust. They're going to deed it right in there. They've never seen a copy of that land trust. They've never seen it. So how do they know who my beneficiary is? Because it's probably not even created yet. Nothing's been put in it. I just go ahead and I put the end buyer as the beneficiary from the very beginning. Right. That way I don't have to worry about doing an assignment. There's no tax consequences for like you as the wholesaler. And then I'll do a simple closing, a non-HUD closing. So, HUD closings are when they're actually going to give you title insurance. But I'll do a closing with just simple buyer and seller statements where I take your end buyer's money and I give it to the REO agent's title company. But then I can disperse that money to give you your $5,000. You never had to be the beneficiary. I just plugged them in from the very beginning and I just took your $5,000 out of the acquisition cost. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it is just really straightforward with the ABI. You just create the land trust with Jean as the beneficiary. She assigns her beneficial interest to the end guy for $5,000. Again, this is why you paper up. I do, again, a buyer-seller statement. I don't do a HUD, but I do a buyer-seller statement that shows the acquisition cost did not change from the first side. So it was not a transaction on real property. I show that they brought me $5,000. I show that the property taxes were already paid from the first side transaction. That's what my buyer seller statement is, to prove that what I'm doing is right. And then that way you can do your ABI to your end buyer. So that's two different ways that you can work that scenario. It just depends on, the title company you're working with on the first side, or if you prefer to use your own title company. Working with banks, I probably would, but so.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Yeah, it can get complicated. I guess I've been fortunate, one, that I've discovered this and that I've been able to use this and done dozens of deals, with this and with private money lenders. And of course, I only still have the tip of the iceberg here with using land trusts. Obviously, so much more about this. And
you're doing your own deals. I'm doing hundreds of other people's deals too.
Sure.
So I get exposed to a lot. And where I really started manipulating land trust was a few years ago during the market crash, where there was just so much volume and there was so much equity to where, sometimes we were doing triple closings. That's just so expensive. Doing 3 insured transactions is so expensive. Land trust were, they were just like a blessing to come in those situations. They can cut down on your closing costs by doing the ABI that Jean was talking about. You're not sitting here paying a title company to do 2 different transactions. You can just work the paperwork from the back end. So
absolutely. And this whole world of real estate is just filled with opportunities like this. When you say, hey, I've got a problem, they've got 3 insured closings, which is just ridiculous, but that's going to get me on another topic, another tangent there. But I have found, and that's kind of what makes me addicted to this business almost, is when you find something that sort of slows you down or stops you or is so difficult. It's like, if you just think really, really hard, and ask and talk to people, then you can find ways around these kinds of complicated issues that are legal and still get your goals
as a real estate investor.
Reach your goals.
And so, my husband and I have been investing for a really long time. Back when my husband owned a real estate brokerage, and back then we were doing, 30, 60 deals a month. We still do them, but not at that volume because of inventory is just not there. But with all of that experience, I can say, hands down, the number one tool for an investor is a land trust. Going back to the first thing that we talked about, you can manipulate the deal while you're still under contract without going through all of these complicated hoops. You're manipulating it behind the scenes. It just makes everything so much easier on how you can structure the deal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If there's any other questions, please go ahead and type them in.
If y'all need me after this, I don't know if I put my information on my profile or not. But if y'all need me, you can email me at info@teachmelandtrusts.com. And it does have an S, TRUSTS. So info@teachmelandtrusts.com. And then when I roll out learning modules for land trust, I'll email you and you can decide whether or not you want to watch the module. I also email out tips and tricks, or if something just crazy happens at the office, like Homeland Security shows up, which, believe it or not, happens like once a month. So I can email you and tell you the crazy way that the land trust helped me not have to disclose your info to Homeland Security that day. So I send out stuff like that at info@teachmelandtrust.com. Just email me there and I'll add you to it. Okay.
Great. And I posted that in the chat section there. So yeah, you can get a hold of her, and of course you can contact me. I can get you give Hope's phone number out. And I also welcome anybody that still has some follow-up questions or any specific issues to reach out to me. I'm a pretty open person. I've got you can book some time with me. I've got some time available this week. if you want to talk about just other things with real estate investing, I'm happy to talk, happy to collaborate, and happy to even be honored to be your advocate. If you'd like somebody on your side, I'm happy to help, always happy to help. And Hope, thank you so much. I haven't seen any new questions come up, so we'll go ahead and let you go.
Children, do one for go pick them up this afternoon.
Your education modules, because I know.
All right. Well, thank y'all for having me. Thanks,
okay.
Jean.
Yeah,
Don't just email me any questions,
too,
and then I'll add you to the list, and I'll shoot some stuff out as it comes out. All right. Thanks, guys.
Okay. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon. Okay. Bye-bye. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.